Let's take a look at how to form sentences using the present subjunctive in Spanish. And over here to the left, you see a column. And in this column that's buried into the ground, I have written cinco leyes, 5 laws that we need to follow in order to use the present subjunctive. Okay? So our first law over here is we must have a que in our sentence. The second law is we must have 2 different subjects. This third law, we must have one of these expressions. Okay, so we must have a wish, an emotion, an impersonal expression, a request, a doubt, or ojalá. Okay, and I'll explain what these mean in a second. The fourth thing we must include is these endings switch. Okay, so AR endings now have ER and IR endings, and ER and IR endings now have AR endings. And the fifth thing is to use the AR and ER and IR endings, we must start with the yo form in the present tense, drop the O, and now we have our stem. Okay? So now let's look at some examples, and we're going to check to see if these sentences have these laws. So let's look at this first sentence, okay? And we're going to focus on the verb querer, which expresses wish, okay? So let's look at this sentence. El profesor quiere que los estudiantes estudien. The professor wants the students to study, okay? So here's our que. Here's subject 1, subject 2. And if we look here, quiere is our expression over here, so it's W. And the last thing is, if we look at our verb after the que, it has to be in the subjunctive. And so this is an AR verb, and so it ends in EN. And so the ending switched, okay? And so now this is a good sentence using the present subjunctive. El profesor quiere que los estudiantes estudien. Okay? Let's look at a second sentence. And the verb is esperar. Okay, that expresses emotion. So Juan espera que María cocine bien. Juan hopes that María cooks well. So we have our que, we have our first subject, Juan, we have our second subject, María, we have our expression, which is emotion, espera, and now if we look at our verb cocinar, it ends in an E and not an A, okay? So once again, we have a good sentence using the present subjunctive. Juan espera que María cocine bien. Impersonal expression, okay? And our phrase over here is es importante. Okay, what does it mean to have an impersonal expression? Well, it doesn't have a person. Okay, and so es functions like the phrase it's. Okay, so let's check this sentence. We have a que, we have this subject here, es, we have the second subject, which is nosotros aprendamos. We have our expression here. And the last thing is, if we look at the verb aprender over here, it ends in amos, and so the ending switched. Okay, so this is another good sentence using the present subjunctive. Es importante que aprendamos español. It's important that we learn Spanish. Why is it important that we learn Spanish? Well, the Hispanic population in the United States continues to increase, and so we should probably learn Español. Okay? And let's look at this next sentence. And we're going to look at the verb recomendar, to recommend. And let's check to see if we have our elements. So we have que. We have our first subject here, which is yo. We have our second subject here, which is tú. And we have our expression, which is a request. And so now let's look at our sentence. actually, the last thing we have to do is check this verb over here. Okay, so bañarse. Okay, it's an AR verb, and so now it ends in ES, and so the endings switch. So, te recomiendo que te bañes diario. I recommend that you bathe daily. Okay, we have to bathe daily in order to smell really nice. Okay, so one thing I need to point out here is this te. Okay, when using recomendar, we use indirect object pronouns, and so this te is going to agree with this subject here, subject to. Okay, and let's look at the next verb, dudar, to doubt. Okay, now let's look at this sentence. So we have our que, our first subject here is nosotros, our second subject over here is ellos, or los políticos. We have our expression here. Let's write the D here. We have our doubt. Now, if we look at this verb over here, this is the verb ser. Okay, and the verb ser is an irregular verb in the present subjunctive. Okay, and so it's seyan. Now, this is another good example of the present subjunctive. So, dudamos que los políticos sean honestos. We doubt that politicians are honest, right? Why do we doubt that? Well, because they tell mentiras, lies, okay? And let's look at this last example. And the expression is ojalá. And ojalá means kind of like God willing, I hope, let's hope, okay? And so we have ojalá. So we have our que, we have our ojalá, we have our second subject, so this would be the first subject, and we have our expression here, which is ojalá. And the last thing is, this is the verb vivir, which is an IR verb, and so it ends in AMOS and not IMOS. And so now we have another good sentence. So, ojalá que vivamos por muchos años. God willing, we live for many years, okay? Or let's hope that we live for many years, okay? So, take a look at this video. Make sure you understand these leyes and make sure that you use all 5 of them, all 5, okay? Let me know if you have any questions. Hasta luego.